A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir la'in ar-rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. My dearest brothers, sisters, God seekers, believers, Salamun alaykum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh, and welcome to this third session of this podcast series, The Principles of Faith, where we're being guided by the amazing book written by Ayatollah Naser Makarem Shirazi entitled The 50 Lectures on the Principles of Faith for Youth. But hey, even if you're an adult, you're still allowed to stick around. It's completely cool. And in this session, we have an awesome title, Finding God from Within. And in the next session, we'll look at finding God through external means. So we'll go into what that means shortly. But just to recap what we've covered in the first two sessions, firstly, we said it's completely normal for every single human to want to search and understand God. It's from within. And in the last session, we mentioned that it's valuable for us and also humanity at large to go and search and understand Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it's normal for us to do it, but it's also valuable. So now the question that we want to answer next is, well, if it's normal and it comes from within, and if it's valuable, then how do we do it? How do we go and find Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Of course, this is a lifelong journey. This is a huge discussion. So we're only going to do the very basics of this, but we're going to try and understand how do we go and find Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And broadly speaking, there are two ways. The first way is from within, and that is the focus of our discussion today. And the next discussion, inshallah, from next week, in the next session, will be from external means, and we'll describe what that means a little bit later on. So, a bit of a summary of finding Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For a long time, there's been loads of works on theism, on this belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, from loads of different schools of thoughts, worldviews, etc. And each scholar has their own technique, if you like, to approach this, and you'll see similarities between them. The two broad approaches that I've mentioned already, from within and from external. So what does that mean? From within, this is the shortest way to find Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in fact, I'd go as far as saying that maybe 90, 95, even 99, if not 100% of those of you who are listening, and may Allah bless you, for those of you who are listening, 99, 100% of you have probably experienced what we're going to discuss. But maybe we didn't recognize that that was a journey to find Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But we'll come on to that. And what this within call, what this call that comes from within is when you tap into this inner call of monotheism that comes from inside of us. We'll describe it a bit more. And that's separate to the external means, the second approach, which takes longer, but it's more enlightening. And that's where you look in and around the world and you see Allah's creation and you observe every single sign of Allah in every single creation, in every single particle that exists. And it's a huge journey, right? It requires loads of analysis and thought, and hence it's more enlightening. But our focus is this one from within, the shortest way to find Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this inner call of monotheism that comes from inside of us. So let's take an example to try and wrap our heads around this concept. Take a person, any random general person. They could be from any ethnicity, any race, any class, any faith, any time period, anyone at all. And let's say that that person examines themselves without any special tools, right? So they've not been involved in any religious or philosophical or spiritual discussions, not even scientific discussions, just, and let's call said person X, just average person X. At some point in their life, they will realize that there is this great thing or this great being that is beyond the material world. That said person at some point in their life will feel a delicate call towards this powerful source, which we name or understand to be Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and claim to be Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So our claim is that anyone, any average person, regardless of anything, will experience this inner call of monotheism at some point in their life. Whether they recognize it to be so or not is a different question. So let's just try and tap into what could that call feel like, right? And let's look at you. There's a conversation between me and you. For a moment, look deeply inside yourself. search your heart. You'll acknowledge a light that's deep inside of you. You know it's always there. There's some kind of glimmer of something when you always look inside that's always there. And it always leads you to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Think about those moments where you face deep, challenging, troublesome problems in your life. The loss of a job, the loss of a loved one, the loss of a friend. You didn't get into the university that you wanted. Whatever that thing is. Who have you called out to in those moments? What have you done in those moments? When you were in complete despair, you had this moment where you looked around for something and you called out to something for help. What was that something? Where did you find that something? What made you call out to this something? Where did that something originate from? Did you see it on TV? Did you hear it on the radio? Did you hear it on a podcast? Or did you hear it and feel it from within? That in that moment of despair, there was this light deep within you that was saying, call me. You resort to this supreme power that is forever there. And it's this hope mingled with love for that power which encompasses your turbulent soul. And suddenly the gloominess of despair is put to the side and you go to bed that night thinking, I've done something. You know, like when you face a maths problem, for example, or an essay, or you need to do some revision, and at some point you go to sleep at like 11, midnight, 1 a.m, whatever, and you feel good that you've done something about it. I've taken a step forward in solving this situation because I've gone and revised well. In the same way, when you feel that moment of despair and you have no idea what to do, at some point you turn around and you look towards that inner voice or that inner feeling from inside. You call out to it and you feel like you've done something. You feel satisfied. You found that inner call of monotheism. Now that's a way to find Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I know, I'm so sure of it, but maybe, let's just say for argument's sake, 99% of you have experienced one of these moments in your lives. And the trigger could be completely varied, but you've experienced it. The worry is, however, perhaps we didn't hear or feel this call. Because maybe in that moment we were actually getting distracted by everything that's around us and we didn't hear it. Flashy things, be that money, cars, house, the rat race, jobs, university, whatever, even things that are explicitly good for us, family, friends, even service, khidmah. Maybe we got distracted by the fame. Something prevented us from hearing and discovering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in that moment. Because when we felt down that we lost that job, when we felt down that we didn't get into that university, we turned away from that call and we used that energy in something else. To complain about it on social media. To call out a friend who maybe got that opportunity that we wanted it and started getting jealous. And instead of reverting into that inner call of monotheism and calling towards this greater power and saying, Ya Allah, my rizq, my decree is in your hands, I trust you. And you feel light. Instead, you went to sleep that night, putting down that person that got it instead. And we get distracted by everything, and we don't hear that call. But sometimes you find that facing a very intense calamity will bring us back, and may Allah keep us safe. And what kind of calamity am I talking about? And I remember, and for those of you who may remember as well, there was a flight going from Iran, from Tehran to Ukraine in Jan 2020, if I'm not mistaken. And unfortunately, it hurtled toward the floor, and I believe everyone on board was killed. And in fact, I remember it was that morning I got a call from one of my family members saying that our dear uncle was actually on that plane coming back from Ziyarah. And we saw him. We saw his group, in Karbala. And my wife and I were like, whoa. You know, the family was shaken. Obviously there's the loss, but the way in which the loss occurred was unfathomable. You don't think that's going to happen. Now, it was very tough not to think about how does that individual, or those individuals on that plane, and may Allah grant them all the highest stations of heaven alongside the Ahlul Bayt alayhim wassalam, and may Allah grant patience to all their family members and friends. But when that plane is hurtling towards the floor, and you know there's no other way out of this, you know what the destination is, the pilot's told you we're going down, that's it, we're finished, and you've got 30, 29, 28, 27 seconds to go, 5, 4, 3. What kind of inner feelings start to overwhelm you? Within all of us at that moment, this feeling comes through and we turn towards something that we think that can save us. We don't know what it is, but we turn towards that something because we just still think there is some kind of hope that we can call out to where this ultimate power resides. That is that inner call of monotheism. That is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And only a few people won't resort to God in light of such a calamity. But even powerful people will get humbled. And history illustrates powerful people who would never call unto Allah eventually getting humbled. They think they hold all this power, and you can mention all these recent examples in recent history like Hitler. Even people like that, they may also have these moments. But of course, they may be so distracted. But one example that they don't get it, of course. But of course we have Fir'aun, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran, in Surah Yunus, until when the fate of drowning overtook him, he explained, I believe that there is no Allah save him in whom the children of Israel believe, and I am of those who surrender unto him. Even Fir'aun, when he realizes the fate that could be upon him, even he has this overwhelming feeling of Allah's greatness coming through, and that hope from within. But we have to be careful, my dear brothers and sisters, because we could spend our entire lives not believing, and then suddenly this calamity could come and we could have this moment and suddenly we believe. But then what happens? Once we're saved, do we continue believing and do we continue investing in Allah, or do we go back to our old ways? And Allah warns us of this in the Quran, Surah Al-Ankabut, Surah 29 verse 65, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, فَإِذَا رَكِبُوا فِي الْفُلْكِ دَعَوَا اللَّهَ مُخْلِصِينَ لَهُ الدِّينَ فَلَمَّا نَجَّاهُمْ إِلَى الْبَرِّ إِذَا هُمْ يُشْرِكُونَ. And when they mount upon the ships, they pray to Allah, making their faith pure for Him only. But when He brings them safe back to land, behold, they ascribe partners unto Him. So when you get into that trouble, you start praying, you're praying, but the moment when you're brought back safely, you're like, cool, I'm done, I'm finished again. And what do? إِذَا هُمْ يُشْرِكُونَ. They ascribe partners unto Him. When you've been saved from that coma, from that car crash, from that university that you didn't get into, from that job that you didn't get but something else came up, instead of recognizing that it was Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that saved you, and you know it was because you called out to Him in that moment when you needed Him, instead of calling back to Him and saying thank you, إِذَا هُمْ يُشْرِكُونَ, we turn away and we ascribe partners unto Him. And we say, no, it was the medic that saved me. No, it was my old boss that introduced me to this new job. No, it was even my father who got me this job. إِذَا هُمْ يُشْرِكُونَ. They ascribe partners unto Him. In that moment of desperation, we feel and we get overwhelmed by that feeling of monotheism towards Allah, the Great Being. We recognize Him, we call out to Him. Allah solves the situation, and instead of thanking Him, we thank someone else. إِذَا هُمْ يُشْرِكُونَ. We have to be so careful, my dear brothers and sisters. It's something we have to reflect on. And if you were to now go away and count, how many times maybe have I experienced this moment and ignored it? See it as how many times have I felt Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and completely turned Him away. He calls me with love and I turn my head away. Now, you may ask the question, do we only think that this is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because we've been raised perhaps in an environment where God has been mentioned, in a Muslim family perhaps, or even in a society where God is a known entity? And it'd be a valid argument, a valid challenge that you could bring forward. And we're just going to use a very simple way to try and illustrate that this isn't just because of that. And how we're going to look at history. And if you look at habits and customs, you'll see that they vary constantly among nations, right? You could go to one corner of Pakistan, and even in that specific corner where there's only been one tribe that's lived there for the last however many years, their customs change over time. In the same nation, their customs change over time. So if we identify something that is common throughout time, among every nation, in every single time period, this isn't something that's fleeting. This is something consistent, that is a constant. It's common to all, regardless of race, ethnicity, creed, whatever. It comes from our innate disposition, from our fitrah. It's built in the very soul of every single human being. Now you may be thinking, oh, that's a very conceptual thing, but hey, let me ask you this. Would you agree that in every period of time, regardless of which country, culture, race, whatever, that a mother will always have affection towards their baby? I'm hoping you'd say yes, right? It's common. It's within the mother to feel this way. In the same way Allah has created within each of us this yearning for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It doesn't matter regardless of time, race, culture, whatever. And now we've proven that this searching and this belief in Allah has always existed. We can even look further and realize that worshipping and appreciating this God has always existed too, across cultures and ethnicities. It's just manifested itself in different ways based on how intellectual that community was at that time and how much revelation was to that community at that time. For example, since man couldn't visualize God as a supernatural being, instead they'd search for God in natural objects to satisfy their innate need for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we would see idols being erected from material, and then people would realize that's limited and we're thinking about something unlimited. And eventually we started to recognize alongside the revelation an entity that wasn't material, that wasn't created, that we can't see, but is infinite, and we proved it. So even throughout time, not only do we see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has been in the soul of every single human being, but even every single culture has found a way to manifest it, be it by thanking nature, or be it by thanking idols. Now we're not saying whether that's right or wrong, we're just saying that this concept of having an outlet has always existed. And some materialist scholars would find themselves stumped for answers, right? And eventually they just kind of make up their own conclusion. As I said, they'll be like, oh, it's nature. Then you could ask the question, right? Why has nature provided man with 2 kidneys? And they'd argue, you know, it helps man live more, and that's a very nice way to see it. So we'd ask the question, does nature, this lifeless nature, this non-existent nature, care about us living more? Or is it actually implying that there's a God whose knowledge and power is beyond imagination, is beyond mercy, is beyond wisdom? No matter how you refer to God, it is God. You just need to accept it. So what have we learned? Love for God is always and will always be in ourselves. And this belief in God is an eternal flame which will keep our hearts and minds warm forever. And in order to recognize Allah, we don't even have to go a long way. If we delve into the depths of our being, we'll find Allah. وَنَحْنُ أَقْرَبُ إِلَيْهِ مِنْ حَبْلِ الْوَرِيدِ. Surah number 50 verse 16, and we are nearer to Him than His jugular vein. I hope that this session has proved useful, has left you with some things to reflect upon, and inshallah you can go back and recount all those different moments where maybe you realised that was actually now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that you were feeling, and we can reach out to Him and thank Him for every single situation that He's helped us in. It'll be tough because we couldn't count them, but inshallah we can do our best and get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as a community together. Please pray for one another. Please pray for Ayatollah Naser. If there are any mistakes there on my shoulders, please inform me so I can correct them. And inshallah, we'll see you at the next session. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh.